Good evening. Welcome back to Cleveland Community Chapel's Old Testament studies. Hope you're keeping up with us on Wednesday night too, because these chapters have been companions to each other in Exodus and Revelation, and they continue to be so as we're in chapter 10 of Exodus tonight, going through the plagues. That's what we've been doing in Revelation on Wednesday night, New Testament study too, going through the plagues. This coming Wednesday night, the seventh trumpet's finally going to sound. Been building up to it. Then we get into the seven bowls. But here we are, Moses and Aaron kept going into Pharaoh. Each time they go to Pharaoh is really an act of mercy. Thus saith the Lord, let my people go. He could let God's people go and save his nation a whole lot of trouble. But pride got in the way, and pride goeth before a destruction, and a haughty spirit before a fall. And the Lord said to Moses, Exodus 10:1, the Lord said to Moses, again, go into Pharaoh, for I've hardened his heart and the heart of his servants. And that's what happens. See, the leadership, when they become godless, those under them and around them become godless too. And that's why the devil's plot is to make our schools godless. Hopefully he can make your kids godless too, see? And that's not to say all the teachers in the schools are godless. A lot of godly teachers in the school, but guess what? When they're doing their job, the way the government requires them to do, they've got to pretend to be godless while they're in their job. And that's the generation that we're raising today, these godless children, and we've sown to the wind, we're reaping the whirlwind, and you're living in a godless society where there's no respect for life. All right, I've hardened Pharaoh's heart and the heart of his servants. God says that there's a purpose for it here. God's sending these judgments one at a time. See, it's really revealing just how wicked Pharaoh was. That I might show these my signs before him. And another purpose, that was the negative purpose. The positive purpose is that God's people will tell their kids and their grandkids about great things that God has done in the future. See, that thou mayest tell in the ears of your son and your son's son what things I have wrought in Egypt, and my signs which I've done among them. And there's a purpose for telling your kids and your grandkids about the Lord, see? That you may know that I am the Lord. And that's how they're going to know that God's the Lord. And Moses and Aaron came to Pharaoh, and they said to him, every time, remember, they didn't go in there and say, here's my opinion, Pharaoh, or here's what I think you could do. They had been in prayer, they'd been in communication with the living God, and God gave them the words to say, and they'd go in there and they'd say, thus saith the Lord. That's the way preachers ought to be. Moses and Aaron came into Pharaoh and said to him, thus saith the Lord, the God of the Hebrews, how long wilt thou refuse to humble yourself before me? Now, if you're not a Christian, here's something for you to think about. How long are you going to continue to refuse to humble yourself before the Lord? Because that's what it just comes down to. You're too prideful. It ain't a faith problem. It's your sin and your pride, and you just won't humble yourself before the Lord. How long wilt thou refuse to humble yourself before me? Pharaoh could have saved his nation a whole lot of pain and suffering. God wouldn't have had to do all these judgments if they would just done what God asked them to do. You can save yourself a lot of pain and suffering and judgment in the future just to humble yourself before the Lord. Say, God, have mercy on me, a sinner. I've been wrong and you're right all the time. Let my people go that they may serve me. Else, if thou refuse to let my people go, behold, tomorrow here comes another judgment. I'll bring the locust into your coast, and they'll cover the face of the earth, that one can't be able to see the earth. And they shall eat the residue of that which is escaped, which remains unto you from the hail, last chapter, and shall eat every tree which grows for you out of the field. They'll fill your houses, the houses of all your servants, and the houses of the Egyptians, which neither your fathers nor your fathers' fathers have seen since the day that they were upon the earth to this day. And he turned himself and went out from Pharaoh. Now Pharaoh's servants are beginning to say, like, Pharaoh, if you just save us a whole lot of trouble here. Pharaoh's servant said, how long shall this man be a snare unto us? Let them men go that they can serve the Lord their God. Knowest thou not that Egypt is destroyed? Only one thing was keeping Pharaoh from doing what God wanted him to do at this time. It was his sinful pride. And you still see it today. You know, one regime comes in, replaces the last regime. They reverse all the policies and they try to run it into the ground, and they'll continue to run it into the ground and everything fall apart, because there's no way they'd humble themselves enough to say that I was wrong. And Moses and Aaron were brought again to Pharaoh, and he said unto them, Go serve the Lord your God. But who are they that shall go? Pharaoh wants to know exactly who is going. Who? Maybe just you and Aaron and a few more. And Moses says, we will go out with our young and with our old, with our sons and with our daughters, with our flocks and our herds we'll go, for we must hold a feast to the Lord. And Pharaoh said to them, Let the Lord be so with you, as I will let you go. And your little ones, look to it, for evil is before you. And then he changed immediately and said, Not so. Go now that you are men. Just the men go and serve the Lord. Well, that's what you did desire. And they were driven out from Pharaoh's presence. So the Lord said to Moses, Stretch out your hand over the land of Egypt for the locust, that they may come upon the land of Egypt. Eat every herb of the land, even all the hail is left. Everything the hail's left that didn't destroy, the locust is going to eat. Remember, there's some of the crops had just been coming out of the ground in the hailstorm, and they survived. Now the locust is going to eat them up. And Moses stretched forth his rod over the land of Egypt, and the Lord brought an east wind upon the land all day and all that night. And when it was morning, the east wind brought the locust, and the locust went up all over the land of Egypt. They rested in all the coast of Egypt. Very grievous were they. Before them were no such locust as they, neither after them shall be such. So those locusts that we're reading out over in Revelation are symbolic of something else, aren't they? Because there's never going to be any like that again, that plague. For they covered the face of the whole earth, so that the land was darkened. And they did eat every herb of the land and all the fruit of the trees which the hail had left, and there remained not any green thing in the trees. All green grass, all green trees were destroyed. That happens in Revelation too, don't it? That's still in front of us. Or in the herbs of the field through all the land of Egypt. Then Pharaoh called for Moses and Aaron in haste, and he said, now this is what we've been wanting Pharaoh to say. But see, it can come out your mouth and not be in your heart, can't it? He said, I've sinned against the Lord your God and against you. Now therefore forgive, I pray thee, my sin only this once, and entreat or pray to your Lord God, that he may take away from me this death only. And I pointed out before that we find out when Pharaoh says this, he ain't really sorry for his sin. He's sorry for what's happening to him. It's like the kid that got took to the woodshed. He's really sorry because he's trying to get out of the whooping. That's where Pharaoh's at. He ain't really repenting in his heart. And he went out from Pharaoh, Moses did though, and he prayed, he entreated the Lord. And the Lord turned a mighty strong west wind, which took away the locust. East wind brought them, west wind took them away. And it cast them into the Red Sea. Yes, the fish were happy eating all them locusts. And there remained not one locust in all the coast of Egypt. But the Lord hardened Pharaoh's heart so that he would not let the children of Israel go. And the Lord said to Moses, stretch forth your hand toward heaven, that there be darkness over all the land of Egypt, even a darkness which may be felt. Have you ever been down deep in a cave and they turned the lights out and you really actually tried to see your hand in front of your face and you can't? That kind of darkness, a thick darkness, he says, a darkness which may be felt. Moses stretched forth his hand toward heaven, and there was a thick darkness in all the land of Egypt for 3 days. It was so dark nobody get up and move. They just sat there where they sat in their chair. They saw not one another, neither rose any from his place for 3 days. But all the children of Israel had light in their dwellings. The judgment wasn't up on Goshen where God's people was. It was up there in the big town of the Egyptians where Pharaoh and Ramses, I think it was, the Pharaoh at that time, they all were. Which parallels with what we're reading in Revelation. When the judgments come, they're not for the people of God. They say things like, hurt not those who have the seal of God in their foreheads, but these judgments come upon those that have rejected God. And Pharaoh called unto Moses and said, go ye and serve the Lord. Lights come again. Pharaoh said, hey, go serve him. But just let your flocks and your herds be stayed, and you can have your little ones too. He moved a little bit far. See, the devil's always trying to get God's people to compromise. Compromise can be a good thing, but in a lot of cases, compromise is a terrible thing. If you're right and you compromise with evil, then you've moved a little bit away from being right and a little bit toward evil. then what we see happens, if time goes on and they'll come over here and they want to compromise again. And if you really want to stand and fight for what's right, then the rest of the crowd over there on the devil's side says, well, they're intolerant. They won't give us nothing. See, well, you can't give nothing when you're in the right. Stay there and fight. And Moses said, you must also give us sacrifices and burnt. We can't leave our flocks here. Pharaoh says, you can take your kids, but leave your flocks. See, he's wanting to make sure they got an anchor that they'll come back for. He's afraid they're going to slip off. And they are going to slip off. And Moses said, you must give us also sacrifices and burnt offerings that we can sacrifice to the Lord our God. Our cattle also shall go with us. Moses wouldn't compromise a bit, would he? There'll not be a hoof left behind. Therefore, for thereof must we take to serve the Lord our God. We know not what we must serve the Lord till we get. We don't know which animals we're going to need to sacrifice till we get there. So we're going to take them all with us, Pharaoh. But the Lord hardened Pharaoh's heart, for he would not let them go. He wouldn't make a deal at all. He said, if you'll compromise with me, we might work something out. But if you want everything, I ain't going to get it. But he was in the wrong. He was 100% in the wrong. God's people was 100% in the right. And God's people says, we can't come over here and compromise in the middle. Then we'll be in the wrong too. Pharaoh said unto him, get thee from me, take heed to yourself, see my face no more. For in that day you see my face, you're going to die. In other words, Pharaoh says, next time I see you, I better not see you again because I'm going to kill you. That's what happens to the devil's people. See, they get mad enough, they're just going to kill you, ain't they? They have no respect for your life or anybody else's. And Moses says, you've got that right. You have spoken well. I will see thy face again no more. Now, I pointed this out when we started. That's not a good thing for Pharaoh. Every time Moses and Aaron came in, that was God's grace reaching out again and again, giving Pharaoh one more chance. But when it finally comes to the point and he says, I'll kill you if I ever see you again, they say, okay, so you ain't going to see us again. Then he's closed the door. He's closed the door. Now, he's locked in on the judgment, ain't he? All right, the door's still open for you if you're still alive. The day of grace is still here, and God's still on the throne. He's still in the soul-saving business. See you next time.